Today, we're going to explore a rather fascinating philosophical argument. It suggests that two very different modern beliefs, one in ancient alien engineers and the other in spiritual demonic deceivers, are actually just two different answers to the same profound question, a question born from a deep spiritual crisis in the modern world.
So here's how we'll unpack this. First, we'll look at the spiritual vacuum that opened up in the 20th century. Then, we'll examine the two major worldviews that rushed in to fill that void. From there, we'll dig into their surprising common ground, and finally, we'll see the philosophical trap that both of them ultimately lead to.
So, to really understand this, we have to go back. According to this analysis, the story begins in the 20th century, which was a time of immense spiritual and philosophical upheaval for the Western world. The sociologist Max Weber gave us this perfect phrase to capture what was happening. As science and rationalism began to explain the how of the universe, it seemed to strip away the why. The world lost its sense of magic, its mystery. It became a kind of predictable, well-oiled machine, but one that felt, to many, quite empty.
You see, this disenchantment wasn't just some passing melancholy. It created what this analysis calls an ontological crisis. When the old stories and myths no longer seem to explain our existence, you're left with some very big, unanswered questions. What is all of this, really? What are we? What is our purpose here? And that created a huge void in Western culture.
And I should stress, this isn't some fringe theory. The idea of the ontological crisis is a central problem in modern philosophy, as you can see in academic work from places like Durham University. It's a serious field of study exploring how we grapple with this loss of a shared sense of meaning.
Well, the human spirit, much like nature, seems to abhor a vacuum. That ancient, deeply human need for transcendence, for something more than just our day-to-day material existence, it didn't just go away. It had to find a new outlet. It mutated. Let's take a look at the first of these strange new myths.
So, the first worldview to rush into this empty space was a profoundly materialist one. It didn't try to invent new gods, instead it reinterpreted the old ones. It looked back at sacred history and decided it was really a history of alien technology.
This is the ancient astronauts theory, made famous by authors like Zecharia Sitchin. When he looked at ancient texts, he didn't see theology, he saw technology. Miracles were just misunderstood physics, angels were simply astronauts. He argued that the gods of old, like the Anunnaki, were just biological extraterrestrials who came here and genetically engineered us, turning our sacred creation myths into a kind of cosmic labor dispute. What's so incredible here is just how completely this approach strips away all the mystery. In this reading, the spiritual journey of the soul through the Egyptian underworld, the duat, becomes nothing more than a pre-flight checklist at a rocket base. The sacred Ben stone, a symbol of creation, is now just the physical nose cone of a space capsule. Every single element of spiritual transcendence is reduced to nuts and bolts. Now, at the same time, a completely different worldview was forming to explain the exact same phenomena, things like UFO sightings and abduction stories. But this view came from the complete opposite direction, seeing it all through a spiritual and, frankly, a much darker lens.
Thinkers like Gary North, looking at this from a theological standpoint, argued that these encounters are not with beings from another planet. He called them personal occult creatures, intelligent, non-physical beings whose real purpose isn't exploration, but deception. In this view, they offer humanity false hopes like advanced technology or cosmic secrets to lead us away from a genuine spiritual path. In other words, they're what theology has always called demons.
The argument here is that the evidence from UFO encounters just doesn't line up with the idea of physical spacecraft. You have objects making impossible turns, silent and instant acceleration, telepathic communication, poltergeist activity. These things, they point out, have much more in common with historical accounts of paranormal or occult events than they do with any plausible form of engineering. So on the one hand, we have a theory that says it's all just advanced technology that we've mistaken for something divine, and on the other, a theory that says it's spiritual deception that we've mistaken for technology. They seem to be polar opposites, but what if they aren't? The central argument we're exploring today is that they are actually two expressions of the very same impulse.
And this brings us to the real heart of the analysis, the point where these two seemingly opposite paths suddenly meet, revealing a hidden motivation they both share.
This table really lays it all out. Just look at the shared goals. The ancient astronaut believer is searching for immortality by rediscovering lost alien medical tech. The New Age occultist is also searching for immortality, but by achieving a higher consciousness to become a kind of god. One wants a physical paradise in space, the other wants a spiritual one by becoming the master of their own reality. And here's the crucial insight. Both of these worldviews are driven by what the source calls an escape from creaturehood. It's a deep-seated rebellion against the basic terms of our existence, the fact that we are finite, that we are mortal, and that we might be subject to a power higher than ourselves. Both are fundamentally a quest to seize control, to overcome our limits, to become our own gods. This shared rebellion, this common quest, ultimately leads both groups into the very same philosophical trap, and the analysis concludes with a really potent warning about where this road ends. To really understand this trap, the analysis uses a brilliant concept from the writer C.S. Lewis. He calls it the materialist magician, and it perfectly captures the deep irony at the heart of this modern search for meaning. So, who is the materialist magician? It's the modern person who proudly rejects belief in God, spirits, or demons as nothing more than ancient superstition. But in doing so, they don't actually become free. Instead, they just start worshiping new impersonal powers, the blind force of evolution, the vague cosmic energy of the universe, or the saving grace of advanced alien technology. They've simply traded a personal god for an impersonal and ultimately amoral force. So the final takeaway is this: both paths, born from that same crisis of meaning, end in a new kind of prison. In their desperate attempt to escape a disenchanted world of cold, hard facts, both the believer in alien tech and the believer in cosmic energies create a new mythology for themselves. But it's a mythology without a moral center. It's one that ultimately just worships power for power's sake. So we've traced this complex argument from a crisis of meaning to two rival mythologies that, it turns out, share the same rebellious heart. And it leaves us with a rather pointed question to ponder for ourselves. As we all continue to search for meaning in this disenchanted age, are the answers we're finding leading to genuine freedom, or are we just building more elaborate cages?